Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Split Decision. We have a very special guest, Christy Collier, the general manager of the Melbourne Boomers. Welcome to the Split Decision.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I'm just going to correct you on two things there before we get started. So, recently got married. My name is now
Oh,
Christy Collier-Hill. Don't worry, I forget all the time too. And
I saw the guy in the background just shake his head.
that's my hubby behind me, actually shaking his head. And we are the Deakin Melbourne Boomers. So, major
the
sponsor
Deakin
Deakin
Melbourne
University.
Boomers.
Yeah.
And then so obviously before we get into it, we have to mention our sponsors, Cremlin. They have their new teas out now, so make sure you guys go to the website. They look amazing. Make sure you're using the code Taku10,
Or Tom 10, whatever.
Taku10 for 10% off. And also our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, everything's popping recently. So make sure you just go check out the link in the description. And yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So our sort of first question for you is, do you sort of remember how old you were when you started playing basketball, or that sort of first memory playing it?
I absolutely do. My mum was a gun basketball player, and I used to basically live at the basketball stadium with her for as long as I can remember. And I think I started, dribbling the ball, I don't know, at 5 years old. And I think you weren't allowed to start playing till I think it was when you were 7 or 8. So I started playing then, which was I think under 10s at that point in time. And I'm not going to tell you what year that was because it will show my age, but it was a long time ago.
So, I mean, you spoke about your mum, just then. You spoke about your mum being a pretty heavy influence on you playing basketball. Do you reckon she was a main role model for you, like growing up, for the reason to
Yeah,
play basketball?
she was, and I feel like now I'm an adult on the same. She was an athlete, so she was a basketballer and a netballer, both at high levels. And I actually recall when I was in my early 20s, and she would have been, I don't know, 45, and I got her to fill in for one of my netball teams. And at the end, the people in my team joked and asked if they could keep her and not me because she was still better than me at that age. So she was an athlete, but she also just loved sport, and that's pretty much, she was a better athlete than me. But I'm a sports lover in general. Basketball is definitely my sport of choice, but I love all sports, and I'm particularly passionate about a few sports. But I will literally watch anything, and I just love it. And that sort of influence from her, which is about the love for sport, the love for being active, and just being involved, has been a really big influence on me.
And I know, like this whole period of like no sports has been a pain.
Oh,
Nightmare, guys.
It's been a nightmare.
we finally got,
Everything's starting to come back.
no, we finally got the football back. I was just like, yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm rugby league. See, I'm originally from New South Wales, so we've had the footy back for a few weeks, which has been pretty exciting. But the F1 is back on Sunday, which I've become a new fan of after watching the F1 series on Netflix. So pretty excited about that for Sunday.
Yeah.
My like sports, like I don't know how to say it, but like the amount I wanted to watch sports got so bad. There's like YouTube channel like Marble Racing, and they just like they post like
Marble
racing
Oh,
like F1
God.
type. And I started binging it because I was like, all right, this is the closest thing to sport that I'm
You
getting.
could get.
I can get.
Yeah. We've gotten really into the darts.
Oh yeah, darts. I love
Darts
World
is
Series
actually
darts,
elite.
bloody fantastic. It's so entertaining.
I love the crowd.
The crowd's insane.
Yeah, the crowd's the best
The
part.
crowd's the best part. Yeah, it's
Best part.
excellent. Anyway, we digress.
Shout out to Lewis Leeds, the F1 driver.
Yeah.
Hey.
He's a mate of ours.
All
Why are
right.
you just name dropping Lewis? You just name dropping.
Yeah, he's a good mate of ours.
Nice.
So as a kid growing up, like, did you ever hit this realization where you could like, I can go professional playing sports?
Oh, probably not really. I think like most kids, you always want to, I don't know. I think if you have a sport that you love when you play growing up, you kind of want to always try and get to the pinnacle of that sport. And I kind of had always wanted to do that. And I played, kind of rep juniors and Australian junior championships and all that sort of stuff. And then I think played a couple of years with the ACT Academy of Sport, and then got involved in the Canberra Capitals program for 2 years, which is, I think, 97, 98. So I would say, I was involved in the program. I was like a fringe player in the program, but still in the program. And I absolutely loved it. But I've got to say, I don't know if I was never going to be that superstar player, if you know what I mean. So,
Yeah.
like I was a good player, and I enjoyed it and I loved it. So I did that for a couple of years, and then at that point in time, I was also studying at the University of Canberra and studying sports administration actually. And I would say I wasn't doing either particularly well. So kind of made the decision at that point in time that basketball I would still continue to play, but I kind of took it right back and just went into playing kind of local comp and just focusing on my studies from there on in.
Right. So other than your mum, did you have any other like basketball idols or people that you tried to model your game after, or that you saw like, oh man, I really want to be like them?
Well, that's interesting. I think I definitely had idols, and for me, it was Andrew Gaze. I think lots of people around my era would probably say Andrew Gaze, just a legend of the game, and that he was my basketball hero growing up. I think from a women's perspective, we didn't get to see a lot of women's basketball when I was growing up. It wasn't very visible, and certainly it's way more visible now. But so I grew up watching people when I could, like Michelle Timms, and I'd probably say from a female perspective, she was right up there for me. But then probably in the latter part of me playing, I played against a very young Lauren Jackson for a couple of years in Canberra, and remember thinking at the time, holy shit, who is this girl and what's she going to do, because she's amazing. And then obviously watching her career from a female basketballer perspective has just been incredible. And so it hasn't been a role model from my playing days, but I've just followed her career with real admiration, and I just love everything she's done for it. And we're very fortunate now in the WNBL that she's heading up the WNBL through her employment with Basketball Australia. So it's great. I actually get to work with her and call her up when I want to, and that's pretty cool.
Just casually Lauren Jackson.
Is it sort of surreal? Is it like sort of surreal as well? Like you working with someone like Lauren Jackson, it's like you like love watching her career. Now you're sort of like colleagues in that sense.
Yeah, I think so. Look, I mean, I admired her basketball career, but at the end of the day, her and everybody else, we're all just people, and that she's a lovely person just in her own right. And so yeah, she's a pleasure to work with, and I don't tend to get starstruck very often, and so certainly wasn't starstruck when I met her. But yeah, like she's just a great person, and she works really hard, and I think it's just great to have somebody with her. God, just her background and her knowledge, and certainly her profile involved in running the WNBL now, because it can only be a good thing.
Right. So in the early 90s, you played with the Canberra Capitals. So what was your first professional game is always a dream. Like, how was your first experience like in game for you? Like, what was the feeling that you were getting through that game?
Unbelievable nerves, and felt like you were going to throw up. And I reckon most people who have played it, any game, any sort of game of significance, even if it's your junior grand final in under 15s or something, everyone has that same kind of experience, which is the butterflies, the nerves, the God, I want to play well, am I good enough, all of that sort of stuff. So it's all of those things.
Yeah,
the Div 3 Destroyers finals,
Oh yeah, you won a grand final. I
wasn't even playing, but I still felt the nerves.
There you go. Well, for the Boomers, when I watch them play, I get nervous. I'm nervous before big games, and I'm not even playing, so I could only imagine how they feel.
Yeah, I always get nervous whenever Oklahoma play. It's just Oklahoma. It's just like.
But I think it's also that residual. It's like them. You're like, I know, like I want them to do well at that level, because like you're like your friends, and you work with them. Like I want them to do well. Your Oklahoma thing, I don't know.
It's Oklahoma. Chris Paul's the GOAT.
Oh my god.
No, I mean that grand final that you guys won was pretty funny. I mean, if you can insert the clip of Luke hitting the game winner, you're right now. You hit a game-winning three to win the grand final.
Right.
Last like 20 seconds or something. It's crazy.
Oh, nice.
There was like 3 seconds left.
Oh, 3 seconds left.
We'll go on if we start talking about it.
Yeah, exactly.
But so reflecting on your professional career, do you remember the best game that you ever played?
My professional career was pretty much bench warmer professional career, really, for the Caps. So I wouldn't even say there was any games of any real significance that I was involved in. It was very short, very brief, spanned across a couple of years, but wasn't very. Oh, look, it's memorable, but not memorable, if that makes sense.
Right. But if you were to describe your game to the listeners, how would you describe your game of basketball?
How I played?
Yeah.
Oh, look, you can't see because I'm sitting down. I'm super short. I'm only 5'4", so I was definitely a point guard and nothing else.
Right.
And my game was definitely my passing game. So assists were always the key stat for me, and dish them out pretty well, and shoot the 3 ball pretty well as well.
Right.
On Stockton, that's what.
Steph Curry range.
So
Not quite.
So to moving on, you were hired in May of 2019 to join the Deakin Melbourne Boomers as the GM. What was sort of the decision making of, because I think you were working at the Australian, I can't.
Yeah, so I came across. I studied sports admin at Uni of Canberra as my undergrad degree, and then I've done some postgrad work in marketing and comms, and then did a postgrad international sports management degree, and then finished off an MBA last year. So I've kind of gone down the path of definitely wanting to work in sport, and studied along the lines of being able to progress through that. And I've kind of worked in sport now for, probably the guts of 15 years across various roles. So I started in golf, which was interesting. I'm not a golfer. But I spent 7 years there, and that was a really good, I suppose, learning curve and platform for me. And then moved across to Fitness Australia, which was basically the governing body for the fitness industry in Australia. So kind of worked my way up through the ranks there, and kind of finished up as the COO, Chief Operating Officer at Fitness Australia. And then I saw the job come up with the Boomers, which for me looked pretty exciting. But at the time, my family and we were living in Sydney. And we've got 2 little children as well. So we kind of had a big chat about it. I think in terms of roles that I would ideally like to do, it was like a dream job, to be honest. It's working in sport, in a sport that I love, in a sport that I understand, that I've played at that level. But to be honest, the appeal of that was one thing. The other thing is, once I started to get involved in the interview process with the Boomers and do my research and learn a bit about the organisation, what really appealed to me is that I think, like every pro sporting team, they exist to win a championship, right? That's what you're there for. But they also exist for far more than that. And we definitely, I say we now because I'm part of it, but the Boomers, we definitely stand for equality, and we're proactive in talking about women and girls in sport, and also women's professional sport, and trying to raise the bar in lots of areas across that, including things like pay gaps, facilities, media coverage, all of the above. So we don't our work day is not just about winning a basketball championship. It's about a broader spectrum of things. It's also about creating pathways for athletes and coaches and administrators to come through and sort of, be part of that for them. And they also are very, very strong and active in the community. So getting out there to schools, to young people, doing clinics, doing camps, doing visits, doing talks, all of that sort of thing. So the Boomers themselves are a professional women's basketball team, but the organisation is far greater than that. And for me, I'm really passionate about a lot of that stuff, particularly the women in sport piece. And so that was kind of it for me. I thought, yep, that'll be the right fit for me. So on top of loving the game, and God, I get to sit there and watch WNBL games, which is pretty bloody awesome as my job. There's also some really cool stuff, and we're having impact, and we're making change and doing things, having a really positive impact, I think, in what we're doing.
Right. Yeah.
I think that's amazing to see as well, because especially the last 10 years, even the growth that we've seen in all around the world in professional women's sports, and we can only go up from here as well. So hearing that's the goal of the Boomers is amazing to hear.
Yeah, look, it is, and we've still got a really, really long way to go. I mean, you guys would have probably seen, but the media coverage, which was I do a blog post on LinkedIn once a month, but the last one I did was about media coverage of women's sport during the COVID period, and it's been absolutely, normally it's not great. It's beyond ridiculous.
Yeah.
I think at the start of COVID, I think I'd got the Sunday paper 3 weeks in a row. Flicked through the sport, which I started at the sport, probably like you guys, Sports End, flicked through the papers, not even one piece of content on female athletes or female sports. So you're talking, 8, 10, 12 pages, all men's sports. Half their readers are females, and we still can't get a gig in there. So we're fighting the fight, but we've still got a long way to go.
Small steps, one step at a time, but we'll get there.
I say big steps. Take some big steps. Just put 50-50 in the papers, guys.
Let's jump.
Let's jump.
Yeah, totally.
But then, if you look at it, I know, I don't really read the paper, especially news cycles.
Really?
You see, huh?
I read the paper every Sunday.
I don't read the paper, but the newspaper, you read some stuff they have out, it's just like especially like about a basketball in America, like oh LeBron like had like eggs for breakfast. Like it's not relevant to like
Oh,
with
it's
like
so relevant.
like replace it with something like more informational, like especially like the women's game that deserves more coverage as well, because it's definitely getting better. And like obviously like Kobe Bryant, obviously what he was doing like promoting women's basketball, like especially with his daughter, that was amazing. So like
amazing.
Oh,
so
yeah,
like yeah.
Leader. And he's a real leader in what he is.
Yeah, he was, and I think we don't need men to do things like that, but when they do, it has real impact. And somebody like him, obviously with his profile, enormous impact.
Yeah, exactly. Kobe Bryant, one of the greatest ever to do it. Moving on. You got the shirt in the background, the high school shirt. Moving on from that. So a lot of people compare the two cities, but you moved from Sydney to Melbourne. What was that transition like for you?
Yeah, to be honest, we've loved it. So my husband is from Sydney, but I lived in Sydney when I moved from Canberra for 10 years, and now we've been in Melbourne for a year, and we love Melbourne. It's a bit more Sydney is very hectic in all areas. And Melbourne, while I know Melbourneites complain about the traffic, it's nothing compared to Sydney. But we think it's pretty cruisy here. We think the people in general are really nice. The weather's got a bit to answer for. But for the most part, we felt really welcomed here. We really enjoyed living here. The Boomers as an organisation have been really welcoming for me, and I've made some really good connections and friendships out of that as well. So yeah, we like it, and we don't think we'll be moving anytime soon.
That's what we like to hear.
Yeah.
So you sort of alluded to this before, but you joined the Boomers from Fitness Australia. What was that sort of transition like from being the chief operating officer to the general manager position, like to those like switching positions?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like the 2IC second in charge role, the COO, up to the person in charge really at the Boomers. So it's a step up career wise, which is the direction I wanted to take. It's been a learning curve. So there's lots of areas that over the last 12 months I've I suppose really learned, and probably couple of the biggest ones are when you're in that role, when you're heading up an organization as a GM or a CEO, the sheer volume of people that you have to connect with, the stakeholders of an organization is just, it's huge. So for example, we've got board members, we've got front office staff, we've got a coaching group and support crew there, we've got all the playing group, we've got key volunteers, then we've got relationships with all levels of government, then we've got Basketball Australia, Basketball Victoria, and the list goes on and on and on. And in the role that I do, part of my role is relationship building and relationship management, and it's with all of those people I just mentioned and more. So it's certainly that's kind of I suppose a new level when you're kind of taking that step up in role. And then really it's managing the whole business. I mean, like most professional sporting teams now, we are a business. We're a small business, essentially, a small to medium-sized business. And so managing every element that goes along with that, which is ensuring we've got revenue coming in, ensuring we're paying our bills and doing all the right things there, ensuring we're sustainable. And obviously there's been challenges along the way, more specifically in the last 3 to 4 months with COVID and what sort of impact that's going to have on us from a business perspective. And it's a bit unknown at the moment. We may not have crowds, we may have partial crowds. We're still a bit up in the air with how that looks. So it was a step up. I felt really supported by the board of the Boomers, and everyone at the organisation was pretty fantastic and welcomed me pretty well, and have kind of helped me along the way a bit over the first 12 months. But I think this year will be bigger and better. Now I've got a year under my belt. I've seen how everything works, got a really good understanding and a really good feel for it, and I've built all those relationships, and now's the time to kind of start really making some impact.
Yeah. So what do you feel was a high point of the season for the Boomers?
Oh, yeah, look, there's a couple of things. I think if you're talking about on-court, I mean, obviously we got to the semi-finals again this year and unfortunately knocked down at game 3 by the Eagles, then went on to win the grand final. If you ask me, and clearly I'm very biased, but I think the grand final should have probably been Boomers and Caps this year. Flyers are in there too, and obviously they had a very strong team, so they deserve to be there. But so on-court, we finished, we finished third on the ladder and then knocked out in the semi-final. So that was a pretty good result. We had a couple of really good things that we did off court. So when the bushfires happened, we undertook a bushfire fundraising relief project where we had tins at games, we did online auctions, we did in-person auctions, we did a whole lot of activity around that and raised nearly $20,000 that we gave to the Gippsland Emergency Relief Fund. And so it was just a really good example of what the Boomers do in terms of the community. And so we didn't have to do anything, but we thought it would be a really good thing to do to help support those of who are in our community who've been affected. And then following that, we took the entire team down to the Gippsland region in January this year for a visit, just to visit schools and say g'day and talk to people that have lost their houses and things like that. So the community work that we do is something that everyone in the organisation is really proud of, as well as the on-court performances. And obviously we're looking forward to this upcoming season, and we've got a few Olympians in the mix for next year. But the thing that's happening right now is, and I'm not sure if you guys are aware, Ezi Magbegor headed off to America on Monday, and she is going to be competing in her rookie WNBA season this year. So
wow.
I think that'll be one of our off-season highlights for the Boomers.
Ooh, that'll be good.
I think I think what you're saying is important. Like a basketball team is like the connection to the community is just as important as like on-court performance. So it's like, and like my memory, I was like, I completely forgot. Like I know it's bad, but the bushfires were actually earlier this year with everything that's going on. It's just like it's crazy.
Yeah. It is, yeah. And look, another thing that the Boomers do, and it's synonymous with the Boomers games, is at the end of each game, every single player stays on court, and it's in a kind of coordinated fashion, and they sign every autograph and take every photo with every person in that stadium who wants one. And then once that's finished, then they'll go into the change rooms and, talk to the coach and do whatever they need to do. So it's part of how the Boomers connects with the community, but also as a family. So our game day attendees are lots and lots of families. Kids love it. I mean, where else can you get up close and personal with an Australian Opal or a WNBA player? Talk to them, get an autograph, have a photo. I mean, you just don't get that sort of access in other sports. So it's something that is quite unique, I think, in the WNBL, and definitely unique for the Boomers. We see a lot of the other teams in the league doing that now too. So it's a good thing.
I can't remember who said it. I can't remember who said it, but they go, for the athlete it's a second, but for the kids it's like a lifetime.
Exactly right.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they'll cherish that moment forever. Like you meet someone like of a high profile. It's just like, wow, I met them. Like I'm friends with them. You feel like a special connection with them now.
Well, that's it. And we have kids that come up to Kayla George and Maddie Garrick after the game, and they come up to them after every game, because they come to every game, and they feel like they know them. They feel like they're friends, and they kind of are in a way. And it's a really, really cool thing. And it's one of the benefits of, I suppose, being a little bit on the smaller side, where you can't do that in an AFL game and you can't do that at an NRL game, but you can do it at a WNBL game. So one of the things I really feel strongly about is, for parents, when you're thinking about role models for your kids and who you look up to and where you spend your money and which games you take them to. Again, clearly I'm incredibly biased, but I just think, the Women's National Basketball League, the Boomers especially, they're great options. And I think for all those reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys heard the story about Shaq, how when he went to meet David Robertson, David Robertson wouldn't give him an autograph. And then Shaq remembered that for years. And when they played into the finals, Shaq, that's all he had in his mind. And then the Lakers killed the Spurs. So it's like, obviously it's like, but like stuff like that. So like,
it's stuff like that. I remember reading that. That was funny. I had a little chuckle myself.
Meeting your idols and like
people remember.
You remember. Like even like us doing this, like the very select players that we've gotten to talk to, they're all amazing people and like really incredibly nice. And it's like I know like if me and Para like ever stopped in, that was something I always remember. It's like Lindsay Allen. Lindsay Allen was just an amazing person. I always remember like the conversation that we had with her and stuff like that.
Yeah, like even after like we stopped recording, you'd have a conversation with them afterwards, and they're so relaxed. They're so like relaxed and just fun to talk to. It's just the best.
It's good.
The whole thing. It's so fun.
It's fantastic.
All right, so you sort of talked to us about your career path leading to becoming the general manager of the Melbourne Boomers. But like for any like sort of kids around the world that would like that say they want to be the next sort of Melbourne Boomers or Canberra Capitals general manager, what sort of advice would you give them to sort of put them on that path?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think we did a bit of work in Knox City Council, which is our kind of local council area, over the last 12 months. And we met a young lady whose name is Molly Roche, and Molly did some volunteer work for us. And then we ended up having a chat, and she kind of came in and did some work for us in the office. And one of the things she said to me was, can I have a chat with you? And then she said, I just want to know how I want your job, basically. And I said, well, that's really good to know, because I think it's great to have young women that are aspiring to be in these kind of leadership roles within sport at all levels. I think there needs to be more of it. For me, all I can really share is, I suppose, my pathway and my experience, and that would be to, if it is something that you really want to do, you've really got to work for it. And I think studies, whether it be tertiary or TAFE, however you want to proceed with that, it's definitely a good place to start. But in the sports industry, like a lot of industries, but getting your foot in the door is definitely the hardest thing. So the advice I gave to Molly was that do volunteer, do internships, do all of those types of things, because so often they lead to roles. And especially if you get in, you do a good job and you show what you can do, if you're good enough, often they do lead to jobs. So definitely studying the career path that you want to take is important. Get in there. So volunteer, get an internship if you can, that's even better, or a scholarship program, or however that looks, but kind of identify some areas that you might want to be involved in and kind of do that. And then the third thing I would really recommend is mentors. So I probably have a handful of mentors that I work with some on a regular basis, some I just, call occasionally to run things past them. I think one of the big things is, we never know everything, and there are people out there with far greater experience than us, so leaning on them when you can or when you need to is also just a really important part of growth. And then I hate the word, but networking, right? Just introducing yourself to people that you think might be people that could maybe help you along the way, or just getting yourself known in the circles, I think is a really good thing to do as well.
Right. So like, we spoke about it before when we were like, people see what's only televised, but what would you like? They don't see the behind the scenes of what you do. Like, what would you say like is a day to day day for you? Like, what are you doing in a day to help Melbourne Boomers thrive and be where they are? Like when people see them on the television and stuff like that.
It's a really good question, because even my own dad says to me, what do you do really for a job? Like, is it a full-time job? Yes, Dad. But all year round? Yes, Dad. All year round. It's a job. It's a full-time job. So at the Boomers, we have between 4 and 5, we call ourselves front office members, so people that work. Yeah. So there's myself, we have marketing communications coordinator, membership and operations coordinator, team and community manager, our head coach, who kind of runs the basketball operations side of the business. And then we've got a few other contractors that are involved there as well. Yeah. And it really ranges. So obviously the WNBL season happens for around 6 months of the year, and that's the primary focus during that point in time. Everything around that: promotion, ticket sales, game day planning and operations, which is a really actually quite a big thing to do. Pardon me. That all happens pretty condensed. But then outside of that, you'd probably say off-season type space, all year round, we have sponsors and partners, and at the Boomers, we have quite a lot. So managing those sponsors and partners and ensuring we deliver on what we say we're going to deliver is a 12-month thing. And it's really important, and we pride ourselves on doing that really well. Our community program and our community work is a 12-month thing. So we are constantly doing programs, clinics, camps in the community. At the moment, it's all online. So we're doing, a range of webinars for community groups and different groups around that space. And that's pretty much 12 months throughout the year. Then we have things like membership, which our membership kicked off, I think 4 or 5 weeks ago. And so that's about 9 to 10 months of the year. We have a membership program that's running, and that's pretty intense and working on bringing members in, but then also servicing them, connecting with them, communicating with them, and then obviously encouraging them to come along to the games. We obviously run social channels, which are 24/7 pretty much. So we do a lot in the marketing and communication space as well. We also do a lot of PR work behind the scenes. So like I said, we do try and work to improve the profile of the Boomers and the WNBL and our athletes that are part of that. So we work with an agency that we meet with weekly, and we discuss, possible media angles and opportunities, and we might look to get a press release out. So for example, for me today, I've got 3 sponsors that I need to do some work on, which are renewal agreements, some deliverables work, and a new sponsor proposal for somebody that we met with a couple of weeks ago. And then we, over the last 6 months, have been working on a rebrand at the Boomers. And we're now working on the brand launch for that, which happens in the next 4 weeks, 30th of July. So and then we go live for public sales on memberships from 1 August, and our clubs and associations, which we have a membership category for as well, on that date. We're signing players, we're negotiating with players, we're trying to get contracts done leading into the season so that we've got a full squad and ready to go. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea. There's no 2 days that are ever the same.
Yeah.
They're all very different, and
there's no rest days.
There's no rest. It's really interesting because even now, which is the off season, we're just as busy. It's just a different type of busy. So we're more focused on other things in the off season, and then in season we're all focused on the WNBL basically.
How far ahead do you guys plan? Like, do you plan the 2021 year in 2020 or like 2019, or like how does it go for that?
Yeah, we're always at least 12 months ahead.
Right.
But we should be more, to be honest. Like we should really be 2 to 3 years ahead, and we'll probably look to start to get to that point. But we're always at least 12 months ahead. So, we've signed our roster for this upcoming season, but we've already started discussions for the next season. Yeah. We've got a couple of people on contracts for multiple years. So we've already got a few on the roster for next season. And so we're always thinking ahead, and we're thinking about the roster. We're thinking about the training program. We're thinking about the community program. We have a Boomers Academy, which is for juniors, Boomers Academy camps and clinics. We're always thinking about how they roll out and when we're going to be doing those. So it's very important to have a short-term view and make sure things happen, but the longer-term view is just as important. Otherwise, it'll just creep up on us and we won't have anything in place.
Right.
You mentioned before, but you guys signed Ezzy this season.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a criteria on like this is the sort of player that we want to be playing for the Melbourne Boomers?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I'll share with you what our head coach Guy Malloy kind of shares with us. So Guy and myself and the other coaches are involved in the recruitment process, but for a player to be, I suppose, invited or asked to play for the Melbourne Boomers, he has 3-pronged criteria, and that is character, ability, and stability. So in character, it's about people that align with the values of our organisation. We're very much a values-based and values-driven organisation, and we like to get people on board who are aligned with those values. And if they're not aligned with those values, they just wouldn't be invited to be part of the program. And that counts for the entire organisation, from coaches to front office staff to support staff, committee members. So we're very big on that character and values alignment piece. Ability, obviously, being the second one, which is you've got to be able to play at that level, you've got to be able to perform, and you've got to be able to have an impact. And stability. So we believe that competitive advantage is built from continuity, amongst, of course, other things as well. So we are one of the few clubs, I would say, that really looks to return our roster predominantly year on. So of course people move, and that's just the nature of professional sport these days. So for example, I mean, our official roster is still being formally announced, but we've got 8 return players from last year, which is by far and away the most of any WNBL club. And that just talks to that stability piece and how we think that can bring competitive advantage, but it also shows that we got the right people in the mix to start with. And so it's like any business. When you find the right people, you hang on to them for dear life because they're good people and they're the right fit and they perform for your business.
Right. So moving on to some more pressing questions that Taku and I have when we get our
the most important one. The most important one.
the most important one that we tend to ask, or the 2 most important questions that we tend to ask, is so there's only one right answer for this.
No, I'd accept two. I'd accept two.
I'd accept two. I mean, who is your NBA GOAT?
Oh, it's definitely Jordan.
Yay!
Hands down.
Hey.
I'm older than you guys. I got to see him play.
Yeah, exactly.
By far and away.
That's the difference, I reckon, with people, because the people that got to see him play,
yeah,
they always go Jordan, because I never got the experience. I only get to watch highlights, just like, like the documentary did sway my mind a lot, because I was like, LeBron's surely going to be great, because I watched him play. But then I watched the documentary and I was like, you know what? Maybe this Jordan guy isn't so bad. Maybe he's pretty decent.
He's pretty decent. Yeah.
But it's like, I swear, every time it's just like Jordan's like, oh yeah, every record that's ever like any scoring record sort of thing, it's just like Wilt and Jordan.
Yeah.
And then like, and that's it. So like, obviously, I feel like Wilt is
terrible.
heavily disrespected, but like Wilt's era definitely doesn't do him any justice.
Oh yeah.
But Jordan's just 6 rings, 5 MVP, 6 finals. It's just like you can't beat that. You can't, And Kareem's the other one's like heavily disrespected. But but that's just that's me. That's me.
And then also, the other important question that we have for you is, who is your WNBA GOAT?
Oh, definitely Lauren Jackson.
Lauren Jackson, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone says Lauren Jackson. I say Tamika Catchings.
Yeah.
Catchings. We go back and forth sometimes, Taku.
Yeah. Again, Lauren in her prime, she's just dominant. And, Liz Wnba, she's playing over there now, and she's starting to become real dominant in that league. But yeah, definitely Lauren. I don't think you can go past her.
Yeah. Yeah, Taku goes off the fact that Tamika's in the Hall of Fame and stuff.
No, to be fair, because I've only started getting into the WNBA and WNBA this year. So I was doing research for an episode a couple months ago, and I was researching WNBA players, and then Tamika Catchings, I was like, she was ranked top 5 in so many statistical categories. It's impressive.
It has to be.
It has to be Tamika Catchings.
Every person we get on and we ask, they always go, Lauren Jackson's the GOAT.
Yeah, that's true.
It forced us to do research.
She was just a dominant force in women's basketball for so many years, and the fact that she's Australian helps as well. Of course.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The fact that she's Australian.
Lauren Jackson, future episode.
I'm sure she'd be happy to talk to you guys. She's pretty chilled.
But moving on to some of your other career endeavors, you were the director of Dragons Abreast Australia. Can you sort of talk to us about working there?
Yeah, so I did that for, I'm going to say it was about 3 years. You might know better having done your research. So I suppose a bit of background about me was I was a very young person diagnosed with breast cancer. And off the back of that, became involved in dragon boat racing. So, and the organisation is called Dragons Abreast Australia. And essentially it's a national organisation for those women and men, which of course there are a few that have been diagnosed with breast cancer, and they encourage them to get involved in dragon boat racing, which is a very unusual sport to get involved in. So they have a whole range of clubs right around the country, and I got involved with the Sydney one when I was living in Sydney, and loved the sport. It's a great sport to be involved in. It's very, very hard. It looks very, very easy, but it's very, very hard. And so I had joined the Sydney club for about a year, and then thought it would be a really nice way for me to give something back to the organisation and to others that are wanting to come through to nominate to be on the board of the national organisation. So I did that for about 3 years as part of that, and a whole range of activities, but around building the profile of the organisation, working with local member groups, ensuring that they've got the things they need to encourage people to come along and try the sport and get involved in it. And it's a great organisation, and it's still around today, and there's lots of people that are involved in it. There's a group here in Melbourne that are part of it as well, who I know quite a few of the ladies in, and it was just a really nice experience and something that I'm really proud that I did.
Can you sort of explain for the listeners, for our listeners who don't know, what's dragon boat racing?
Good question. How do you explain it? So dragon boat racing is you're in, I suppose, kind of a long boat that looks a bit like a canoe, but it seats 20 people in it. two people in each. I'm showing you on the camera, but clearly listeners can't hear this. Two people on. There's 10 seats in the boat, and you have two people on each seat that go all the way through. So you've kind of got 20 along this long, narrow boat. At the back, you've got a sweep, which is somebody who steers the boat, and at the front, you'll have a drummer, so somebody that hits the drum to keep the timing. So the whole point of dragon boating is all about teamwork and all about being in time. And soon as somebody goes out of time, it stops the boat moving essentially as well as it could have. So it's about timing, it's about rhythm, it's about teamwork, it's all of that sort of stuff. And physically, it's just, once you kind of get right into it, it's very physically demanding. And and it's just a fun sport. So it's there's regattas all over the country. I've been overseas and done it at world championships and things like that. So it's a worldwide sport. It's a growing sport here in Australia, but it's also a lot of fun, and it's also really nice to be out on the water and doing it. There's a real kind of, I think, healing thing about being in and around water, and I think you experience that when you dragon boat as well.
It gave me that I don't know if you like the Vikings sort of thing.
Yeah,
that's
what kind of what you're picturing. You're kind of right. Yeah.
The Viking thing.
I don't know, because I just feel like the Vikings when they go like on like their expeditions and like they'd have like I don't know.
Well, there's a difference. So rowing goes backwards. Dragon boaters row forwards.
So you oars more than like actually.
Yeah. So if you think of a stand-up paddleboard and how people paddle on a stand-up paddleboard, that's how you paddle in a dragon boat.
Okay, I get you.
Very similar.
Yeah.
So more difficult pushing the water, just like upper body strength.
Yeah.
But yeah, as you said, being on the water is very relaxing.
It is.
Okay.
Para, our resident fisherman that nearly sunk his boat. But hey,
I went out for like 9 hours on Saturday, and I caught nothing. It was a good day.
That's the life of a fisherman.
It was the worst day ever. I was just like, great weather, no fish. Moral of the story. Moving on. So you're also the founder of the Pink Movement. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, and that kind of flows on from that story a bit. So after I finished my time on the board of Dragons Abreast, I kind of really still wanted to continue doing something in the breast cancer space. So I started a podcast, which was the Pink Movement podcast, and with special guests on it, all around encouraging those with the breast cancer diagnosis to move more, essentially. So in terms of breast cancer and all cancers for that matter, exercise is researched so heavily and so well proven that it can prevent the symptoms that you receive when you're getting treatment, or help with the symptoms when you're getting treatment. But also the biggest thing is once you've gone through treatment, it can prevent cancer reoccurrence. So my kind of whole philosophy around it is, if there is anything that you can do for yourself once you've been diagnosed with cancer to help you not get it again, that's the one thing that you can do. So honestly, why wouldn't you do it? Sometimes I kind of feel like shaking people and just say, come on guys. But it's that thing where you don't have, when you get diagnosed with cancer, you have control over almost nothing. But one of the things you do have control over is how much you move and how much you exercise. And so my kind of philosophy behind that whole podcast, which kind of then evolved into a website and resources and other bits and pieces, was about providing information and resources to encourage people to move more. The tagline was move more, stress less, and feel better. But it's all very research-based and research-driven, and just really wanting to do more in that space to encourage people to move more after a breast cancer diagnosis.
So I think you're recognized for like the work you've done by the New South Wales Department of Sport and Recreation in 2009 with Women's Sports and Leadership Scholarships. What is this like? What did it mean to you to win this award?
Yeah, I got that. I think I got it for a couple of years actually, and predominantly it was just around the work I was doing in the sports administration space, and I suppose my desire to keep learning and keep growing and eventually get to a job like I'm in today. So they were amazing scholarships to receive, and they involved a couple of workshops with some great leaders that kind of provided some guidance and information, but also provided some funding to allow for further studies, university studies and things like that. So it's a nice bit of recognition, but it's also just another element of continuing on the pathway that I wanted to go. So it just provided me with a bit more opportunity to do that.
So what would you say your favorite memory so far is, like in your career as like a whole when you're looking at it like right now?
God, that's a big question.
Hey, thanks, Matt. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, right. Oh,
These are our follow-up questions, by the way. Sorry.
I'm going to, obviously, I love the current job that I have, right? I'm working in basketball, in and around basketball with athletes, coaches. It's awesome. So as a whole, it is a bit of a dream job for me. I love it. It's challenging, but it's a great space to be involved in. But I also had a job, won't give you the year because again, it shows my age, but I worked for the Australian of the Year Awards for 2 years back in Canberra. And I'd have to say the 2 years, and I was much younger then, but the 2 years I did that role were probably two of the most exceptional years I had, not for me personally, but because of what the role was. So essentially, we ran the Australian of the Year Awards program, but part of that was traveling right around the country, meeting people who were nominated, being involved in the state and territory winners and recipients, and then the national winners and recipients. So for 2 years, I literally got to travel around the country, meet some of the most incredible human beings in our entire country all over the place, hear their stories, hear the work that they're doing, and then be part of helping them be recognized for that. So for me, that was pretty amazing. And yeah, I think I kind of see that as a highlight. I just think it was a pretty special thing to be able to do.
Right.
I'm gonna add the same part, but your career has taken you like everywhere, and like you've sort of gone through like multitudes of doors as we've explored to today. Like for like someone sort of entering like sort of the different kinds of workforces, if that makes sense, what advice would you sort of give them like as they're starting out their like working career?
Yeah, look, do your research. I think don't ever go into anything blindly. I think it's really important that you do your research. Work hard as well. Nothing ever comes. You have people kind of say to you, "Oh, you're so lucky. You've had some good jobs and you've done this." None of it is luck. I have literally worked my ass off from day dot to do it, and I continue to work my ass off to make sure I do a good job in my current job. And then eventually, when I have my next job, I'll do exactly the same thing. And so, good things come to people who work hard, and good things come to people who are focused and keep on the path that they want to choose. The other thing is that reach out to people who know things that you don't. And learn from them, I think, is a really good thing. And look, the only other thing I'd probably say to that is I've been really specific in the roles I've taken throughout my career, and there's been times where I've thought, it's probably time for me to move on, but I was not prepared to move on until I got a role came up that was on the path I wanted to take. And I know that that's not always possible for people, just due to circumstances, but I think if that is something you have the power to do, then I would highly recommend doing it, because it is always better to be on the right path. That kind of what the saying is, at the bottom of a ladder you want to climb than at the top of a ladder you don't want to climb. It's always better to be on the right path than not on the right path. If that means a sideways step or a backways step, or just staying somewhere a bit longer than you had intended while you continue to upskill and look for that next role, I think that's really important, and I think that'll put you in good stead for kind of a long career on a path that you want to be on.
Right. And I guess our final question for you is, for if there happens to be kids watching, like what advice would you give to them that if they're aspiring to be like a pro basketball player or pro athlete in their given sport?
Train. There's no substitute for it. I read Andre Agassi. You guys probably don't even know who Andre Agassi is. Am I getting a very famous tennis player? I read his biography last year, and one of the things he said was his dad used to make him hit 1,000 tennis balls a day, and he didn't particularly enjoy it. But that repetitiveness of just getting out there, consistently doing something until you've achieved the right technique or hitting it in the right spot. There's no substitute for that. And again, comes back to whatever you want to do, you've got to work hard for it, because it's not just going to fall in your lap. So work your butt off, get coached by good people, listen to good people around you, and make smart decisions about how you want your career to unfold.
Yeah, I guess
and with that is some amazing advice. And with that does wrap up today's episode of The Split Decision. So, Christy, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. We really enjoyed having you.
Pleasure,
And
guys.
and it was another step, we on the front office, personality. It was a nice sort of different viewing point than
Yeah, good.
what we've had. And I guess before we go, make sure you guys are liking, subscribing, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. I always forget to say that, but that does really help us a lot. And Taku 10 and Tom 10 if you really want to use it. But Taku 10 at 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 Cremlon's website. I hate you. Why? And we'll see you guys next week.
We'll see you on Thursday. Peace.